Hi, everybody. I'm meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Wednesday as we take a look at a very busy-looking satellite loop here. We've got two storms. This one is that gale center that we were talking about that came out northeast of the Bahamas and is now moving out east in the Atlantic. Looks like right along 35 North. Pretty well-developed little cyclone over there as it moves along. And here's yesterday's weather system that moved through the northeast, and that's offshore. And now we're dealing with a return of some sunshine finally across much of the area of New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England, southeastern New York, and eastern Pennsylvania after 4 days of just doom and gloom and temperatures that in some places never got out of the 40s, and in other places went up and down, up and down. In the meantime, we have another storm that's coming out of the southern plains, and that is producing severe weather across eastern Texas. So you can see the moisture shooting out to the northeast. Take a look at the radar signature here, and there's this area of strong storms now approaching East Texas. They kind of weakened a little bit from the overnight and early this morning, but they're likely to flare up again somewhat as this weather system starts to push to the east. So the active severe weather that's going to be going on in the southern part of the United States continues, of course, and we've got nothing of consequence as we look through the northeast. So at least temperatures are recovering now. It's one of these situations this time of year that once the storm systems move by, because we have sunshine, temperatures want to go up. So at least we're back up into the 50s, although it is a bit breezy. You can see a lot of the wind barbs here at midday reporting 15 to 20 mile an hour winds with some higher gusts, but nothing crazy with regards to the wind. So let's look at the next round of weather events, which will be on Friday into Friday night and early Saturday. And I want to show you, first off, I'm going to show you the NAM temperatures here for Friday morning. And you can see that there's marginal cold air that bleeds all the way down into northern New Jersey and into Long Island with temperatures in the 30s. And it just kind of stays there all day Friday into Friday night and early on Saturday until the storm pulls away. Now, what is of particular concern, I think, is going to be an area right about in here, okay, where I think that there is a fair chance that there could be a heavy wet snowstorm on the order of maybe a foot of snow in some places, especially in elevation-driven areas. I think that's a possibility. This is one of these systems that happens in the early spring that sometimes can surprise, and maybe I have the southern flank of this a little bit too far to the north. I don't know. I think the models might have the flank a little bit too far to the south, if you ask me, but that's the way I'm seeing things. But, this is one of those situations that you get in the early part of the springtime where you have marginal cold air. You kind of have a setup that if you had it in January or February would be a no-brainer snowstorm for most. But this is, of course, now late March, early April. So if you're talking about a day where temperatures don't get out of the mid to upper 30s, that's 20 degrees or more below normal. So that's a big spread, and you don't get those kind of spreads that often. So when we look at the NAM, it races some rain in here by Friday morning, and you can see where the snow starts up. And I think that this is where, the models are going to have a tough time. Different models are going to show different reflections of how cold the atmosphere is. I tend to think that this could be more wet snow across Massachusetts and rather than sleet. But the bottom line is for the areas that I focus on, which is southern Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, and Long Island, this is going to be pretty much all rain, so we don't have to really worry about that. You can see how the model wants to kind of bleed down some cold air into northern Connecticut. And then the storm system begins to pull away on Saturday. It looks like it pulls away a little faster than what the NAM model, the GFS model, had last night, in which case weather conditions may start to improve during the day Saturday, and we could finish off with a nice second half of the weekend where Sunday doesn't turn out too bad. So why don't we look at the old run of the GFS from last night, because I don't have the new run yet. And we'll take a look at the upper air. I was talking with one of my forecaster friends of mine this morning about this issue, Alan Casper, who I have mentioned him before. Those of you who are from New Jersey know him from New Jersey 101.5 and from the New York area from television days back in the 70s and 80s. It just seems like every spring you get this burst where the weather pattern is such that if you had it in January or February, you'd be getting snowstorm after snowstorm. And I guess for snow lovers, it's a bit frustrating to see something like this. But what you have, you have this split flow, and you've got these upper air systems that continue to just race along out in the Pacific jet and continue to move across the southern part of the United States. So as long as these jet streams, the northern and the southern, northern stream and the southern stream remain unfazed, you're going to have these weather systems that are going to track generally along 35 degrees north, or maybe a little bit further north than that, somewhere between 35 and 40 degrees north, and just pass out south of New England and south of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So that puts in the threat that if there's enough cold air, it's being supplied by that northern jet, that you could have an interior northeast snowstorm in early April. Certainly that can happen. And it also means that for areas further south, you get stuck in these situations with the northeast wind and the marine air, and you wind up being cloudy and rainy for days at a time. At least this time around, because this system is right behind this one, it just gets kind of kicked along. So I don't think we're going to be stuck for 4 days here. It'll just be Friday into Saturday morning, and then it gets better. And then you can see the next one that's getting ready to come out. That was the dam that I just showed you, by the way. I'll switch to the GFS now, and then we'll go to the surface and we'll take a look. So we'll go back, and you can see the idea here is pretty much the same as we look from the mid nighttime or run that comes out at 5:30 in the morning. And there's the next one that gets kicked along, because there is yet another system that comes in next week into the west and comes along in that southern jet. That northern part of the split kind of weakens a little bit here, so the model wants to lift that up further west this time around. So we'll see how much, if there's some reality to that. And then it's got this upper low that kind of just plunges down southeastward into the east. And when I looked at this, I thought, whoa, that's a pretty blocky look for the longer term as we go into the middle of the month. It does say to me that if you're looking for any kind of really warm weather, if this is right, that's going to be hard to do with this type of upper air pattern. So very interesting. Early spring forecasts are always a big challenge. So let's back up, because we've got other issues besides what's going on in the east. And of course, we have today's bout of severe weather that's going to break out this evening. Looks like in East Texas, Northwest Louisiana, and in western Arkansas. And then that's going to translate eastward. Looks like the severe weather axis probably shifts on the GFS anyway, a little bit further to the north into Arkansas, and less so down into Louisiana. Then it moves into northern Mississippi and Tennessee. And you can see that low just kind of meanders its way eastward, eventually finds its way to the Delmarva Peninsula, and then out it goes. And there's the snow that occurs up on in central and northern New England, thanks to that big high there that wedges down from Canada. Now, out in the west, we've got the follow-up system that's going to drop down into the Rockies and bring another round of rain and snow there as another low forms in West Texas. And the model's been kind of keying on this idea late over this coming weekend for a substantial severe weather outbreak in southeast Texas and Louisiana. Kind of shows it here too, with low pressure that reforms down in South Texas, and then eventually you get the chance for severe weather even further north into the state. And then it does this Sunday night, which, if that's right, that's going to be some wicked severe weather that will occur from Arkansas down into southern Louisiana. The west, these systems being that they're coming in from the Pacific Ocean, so you get, let me just back up, and here's today. So there's the follow-up system that drops down, into West Texas. So you got another system that's going to follow up behind that, eventually into the Pacific Northwest. You can see it here. It just starts to evolve in the northern Rockies, and that moves east. So a very active pattern. And of course, all these systems that are coming across continue to just impact the east every 2 to 3 days. I think over the long haul, as we move through the middle of the month, if all of this plays out in terms of the amount of precipitation that we're going to get out of all of this, this really does go a long way, to getting rid of this whole drought thing in the eastern part of the United States. And in some places that's already occurred. And by the way, reservoir levels in many areas in upstate New York, northern New Jersey, and on up into parts of New England, water levels are about where they're supposed to be for this time of year. So that's pretty good. Considering how far the rainfall deficit has been, that's actually quite a nice comeback. And the heavy snowfall for the winter, in some cases more than double the snowfall of normal throughout much of the Northeast, has had a very good positive impact on recharging a lot of these streams, rivers, and lakes, and refilling reservoirs where necessary. So that's all good news. Going forward, I want to just look at the upper air pattern really fast, and we'll go wide. One of the things that the model had going into this weekend was very strong blocking, and it's temporary. Blocks are, very transient in nature. They don't last too long. You can see it actually here. It doesn't even show up very well at all. And as you get lower pressures now forming near Greenland, the ridge is further to the east, but it does its job. Here's that split flow I'm talking about here. You can see how you got this separate jet stream, one that goes up through Canada, and then this one on the bottom, the southern part of the jet stream. And this is why we're having the kind of weather we're having with a lot of these systems producing severe weather across the south. You're not getting huge warm-ups. It's not like you have a deep trough in one part of the country and a big ridge in another. This is totally the opposite of that. This is a pattern that shows a lot of activity going forward. And as we move along through time, if this model is correct, you can see what happens here across much of the polar region as we get into, this is now April 11th, April 12th. These are all higher pressures than normal. So the southern part of that jet stream is displaced way to the south. This is fairly impressive, actually, if this winds up being the look. Very blocky in nature as we go through the latter part, say around beyond April 10th. It'll be interesting to see if that plays out that way. This is a very chilly look and very stormy look for the middle part of April. If you had this in January or February and you were a snow lover, you'd be dancing in the streets. But as I said, oftentimes it doesn't happen in the depths of winter, and it winds up happening in the early part of the spring, much to the frustration of those who want to see one last wintertime gasp. Okay, so if you want to see one last wintertime gasp, you can get in your car and drive up into central and northern New England, because you should be able to do pretty well from that. I think there will be some 1 foot plus snows in some elevation driven areas there, and skiers are going to have a bonanza for a couple of extra days of good early spring skiing. Website posts on meteorologistjoechaffee.com, Angry Ben on nycweathernow.com, and thank you for watching my YouTube video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the little red subscribe button on my YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. You get notified every time there's a new video, and it really helps me with my standing with Google. Thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.